All right, it's about 2 minutes after the hour, so we'll get started. Again, thanks all who could join us today for our Oxford Computer Group's monthly webinar series. And today we're going to be talking about Microsoft Security Service Edge, which is a new offering currently in preview stage, both public preview and private preview. Microsoft announced about 2 months ago, and actually part of the Global Secure Access, we come back to July 11th with the reimagining security announcements that they made with a few other uh, important announcements around Entra and how all of that is now playing into security for a lot of customers. We're seeing a lot of interest in this topic. And so we'll step through some slides. At the end, I will have kind of a show and tell. I really won't call it a demo. I do have an environment where I have some of the elements of the Microsoft Security Edge components configured, but felt it a little bit too risky to try to demo during a webinar some of the elements that are there. But I can talk through where in Entra, the Entra admin console to go, and some of the different things that you can do, and also if you're interested in signing up for some of the private previews, how you can go about doing that. So quick agenda. We already did our intros, and actually I skipped to letting you know who I am. As a title slideshow, my name is Francisco or Frank Morena. I go by Frank, and that's you can find me. At the end, we'll have our contact information. But I am a principal architect with Oxford Computer Group, and have been with Oxford for about 7.5 years. Focused on all of the identity and security solutions that Microsoft has had, going back to the enterprise mobility days, that part of the suite, and now into what is Entra and all of its offerings, along with the Defender stack, which plays an important role in Microsoft security story. We're going to talk about why Microsoft has kind of entered this um, this area. It seems like an unusual area for Microsoft um, to try to tackle. Networking and networking security really hasn't been part of the Microsoft story. If you've been working with Microsoft products for a while, you may remember Threat Management Gateway from some years back, which was a solution that was widely deployed. I deployed it, helped customers deploy it and manage it, but it had a lot of its detractors as well. And for a while, Microsoft really wasn't, in the area of network security, if you don't count, Azure infrastructure and Azure firewall and WAF and those types of things. Speaking more so from the on-premise standpoint. So we'll talk about, what makes Microsoft entering the secure service edge. What is their key differentiator? And then the two main components of what comprises the global secure access or the security service edge, those names are interchangeable, both internet access and private access. A little bit about OCG. If you're not familiar with us as a company, we are a Microsoft partner, have been a partner for over 20 years, mainly in deploying identity and hybrid identity solutions. So everything going back to the forefront identity manager and Microsoft Identity Manager solutions to the more modern, up-to-date provisioning solutions that you can enable with various HR sources like Workday, SuccessFactors, and now with the API-driven provisioning, those solutions. We're also a partner that's been on the forefront of the Entra identity governance as well. So we're one of the few partners that can help customers onboard to Entra identity governance and start realizing the benefits of things like entitlement management, access reviews, and being able to connect your applications for those governance features. And we've been working in this space for quite some time. We've been granted Partner of the Year a number of times, and have been finalists most recently 2023 as Defense and Intelligence Partner as a finalist for that award. So we do have a long track record, and most of our consultants and architects have over 15 years experience individually. Again, so we bring a lot of knowledge with regards to identity and access management and also security. Some of the services we can provide: planning and assessment. So we do security reviews, readiness assessments, workshops, conducting workshops around identity, security, and governance. Deployment services, of course. Everything, as I mentioned before, with Entra, Entra ID governance, and we also partner with Savient, so that's why Savient's on our board here. Savient as a all-up identity governance solution as well. We have deep integrations with that product as well, and we also have a managed service component that's run out of our company in Costa Rica. They're all our employees, so it's not a separate, we're not handing that off to someone else. They are OTG employees, but it's a managed service that can help with managed identity service solutions as well. Okay, so let's talk about why the need for secure access service edge, which was that term SASE, SASE, coined by Gartner back in 2018, 2019, to basically define those various components. Traditionally, this is kind of what, and this is an oversimplification of what a typical network might have looked back in the 90s and early 2000s, kind of the pre-cloud days, right? You had your internet connection, you had your firewalls, DMZ, where you kept your proxies, your delivery controllers, and then your corporate LAN, which was nicely secured in the back end, sort of the castle and moat way of providing network security. Of course, we know that in time, a lot has changed. Most of our applications, our productivity suites, our CRMs, our identity solutions have all moved to the cloud, and so have your devices. You're no longer behind those corporate firewalls. They're at home. They're working at a coffee shop. They're traveling. They're mobile. They're on various form factors, right? Not just laptops and desktops, but mobile devices and tablet devices as well. And so, of course, that means that the paradigm has shifted, and security has had to keep up with it. And that's why we've seen the rise of SASE and SSE solutions in the past few years, like Zscaler, one of the leaders in that space, Cato Networks, iBoss, I can name, rattle a few others, because the requirement or the need to secure access to data and to resources from devices and from users who could be anywhere at any given time has become more and more important as the perimeter has essentially, I can't even say shifted, it's pretty much disappeared. There really is no such thing as a perimeter, and has given rise to more companies, more institutions adopting zero trust network architecture. Zero trust, which we know, is all about verifying explicitly, assuming breach, right? Never trusting. That's become important. And so enter the Microsoft solution. And this is where that key differentiator is. And it's interesting, you see where Microsoft has placed this product. And I had an opportunity at boot camp that I attended back in September in Redmond with the product team to ask them, well, why was the decision made to keep this global secure access security service edge solution under the Entra banner as opposed to the Defender banner, which might have made more sense from a security standpoint. And it's really because the Microsoft solution is identity-centric, right? It's a solution that is not just focused on the networking side of things, but is really looking at it from an identity-centric standpoint. And so the value to you as a customer of Microsoft is you may already be using Entra Identity, formerly known as Azure Active Directory, in your environments, and you're already doing things like controlling access with conditional access policies. And so this is a natural extension of those capabilities to now be able to secure your environments for any device, any user, because you're really doing it at an identity level, at the user level, um, regardless of their endpoint, or whether they're using traditional laptop, desktop, or iOS or Android device, and also for all of your networks, so your branch offices, that you want to be able to have the traffic forwarded through a particular tunnel. You're able to set up those dedicated tunnels, and we're leveraging with the Microsoft Security Edge, Microsoft's global wide area network, which is vast. There's over 140 different endpoints around the world. So it really means devices can be close to any particular endpoint at any given time, because there are so many of them. And again, that's the unique approach, right? So Microsoft Global Secure Access, which comprises internet access and private access, um, coupled with Defender for Cloud Apps. So Defender for Cloud Apps is the CASB solution, the Cloud Access Security Broker solution. When leveraged alongside that solution, um, what you get is a solution that converges network identity and endpoint access controls, giving you the ability to secure access to any app from any resource from anywhere. And this is Entra ID simplifies this further with that centralized access policy management, that conditional access enforcement engine, that is able to enable that access orchestration for employees, for your business partners, if you're using B2B, Entra external identities, and all your digital workloads, and allows you for continuous monitoring and adjusting access in real time based on risk conditions as well. So we know Entra Identity Protection is built in to the solution as well. So now being able to take that telemetry data, risk data from users and their sign-ins, and have that be part of the access decision making becomes very powerful and allows for a lot of flexibility. And so again, from what we're looking at, the security service edge solution comprises those two main areas: Microsoft Entra Internet Access, again, which today, what you can do as part of the public preview, and everything you see in the gray blocks is what's available in public preview, is being able to forward all your Microsoft 365 traffic through the security service edge. One of the prerequisites there is just having a Microsoft 365 E3 license enabled, and an Entra ID P1 or an Entra ID P1 license, but you can today start leveraging that. So all your, again, Microsoft 365 traffic, which includes SharePoint, Exchange Online, Teams, can be forwarded through using that traffic profile. And then in private preview is internet applications. So everything else that you want to have flow through, and that's part of the secure web gateway that we'll talk about. But everything that's not Microsoft 365 also having that forwarded or bypassed, depending on what your policies dictate, having that traffic also flowing through the security service edge. And then the other side of the solution, this global secure access solution, is Microsoft Entra Private Access. And private web apps, technically it's a GA solution today, because as you see indicated by the application proxy little bubble here, that is essentially what the private web apps is. If you've used Azure AD application proxy, now Entra ID application proxy to secure your on-premise private or perhaps legacy web applications and have them fronted by Entra identity today, then you've been using this to a certain degree. You've been using the ability to take those on-premise applications that are still behind your corporate firewall, set up an application proxy connector. That application proxy connector makes that outbound secure TLS tunnel to Entra, and now you're able to route that traffic as opposed to having to open up your firewalls to have that direct access through your firewalls and your proxies. You're able to route that through Entra ID and then apply your conditional access policies, your MFA policies, etc. Today, it only works for HTTP based applications. That's why that distinction is made that it's web apps. But with private access, what Microsoft has done is extending that capability, right, to secure access to all private apps, regardless of the protocol, um, for any resource, right, for users anywhere with zero trust networking, network access in mind. So that means RDP, remote desktop, to your servers will be can be secured this way. SSH sessions can be secured this way, and even applications that are non-HTTP, they're TCP based, UDP based, will be protected using Entra private access. And the engine for doing that is conditional access. And if you're familiar with conditional access, it's Entra's access decision engine, basically being able to take the signals that are coming in at an authentication stage and make decisions as to whether the user requesting that access meets all of the conditions. And if they meet the conditions, then making decisions as to whether to grant access with strong authentication methods. It could be as simple as just requiring MFA, or the strong authentication, the phishing resistant policies that are now available in Entra, such as requiring Windows Hello for Business or requiring a FIDO2 hardware security key, or conversely blocking access, based on those conditions. With this integrated model now in the global secure access solution, and these are the things highlighted in yellow. These are the things that are new with Secure Service Edge. So you'll be able to set up conditional access policies for all your private resources. Right? We talked about that in the previous slide with the private apps or internet private Microsoft Entra private access. Being able to secure access to those solutions, all your internet resources as well. Coming soon, it's going to be an expansion of continuous access evaluation. So that's a standard. It's not a proprietary Microsoft protocol, but it's a standard that's been established. Continuous access evaluation is constantly making decisions based on factors such as the device, the location, and being able to make decisions whether it's going to require the user to re-authenticate, or provide stepped-up authentication. That's going to be extended out to private internet and Microsoft 365 resources as well. From the control standpoint, requiring location, so now being able to set up conditional access policies where a required location is necessary, so you can only access this resource from behind the corporate firewall. You have to be on this network in order to do that. Is a new feature that's available. And being able to link your global secure access filtering policies and requiring a compliant network as well. And that's essentially, I think in a few slides is what I see as the key differentiator between Microsoft Secure Service Edge, their SSE solution versus the competitors that don't have the identity components integrated within the solution. So let's talk a little bit more detail about each of these components. So Microsoft Access, Microsoft Entra, Internet Access, again, part of the solution, and it brings with it a unified identity-centric SSE solution that includes a secure web gateway, a cloud access security broker, and threat detection services. Being able to centralize all of that within a unified conditional access policy engine. So what does this result in? Well, now you can seamlessly extend identity, location, and device controls of conditional access to the entire network security stack, securing all data traffic to any internet destination. And mentioned it just prior, but soon that continuous access evaluation is going to be extended into Microsoft Entra Internet Access, and that's going to enable network administrators to enable network policies that adapt dynamically to changing conditions such as a user's risk score, their device compliance status, and the onboarding and offboarding of users. Altogether, it's a easier, more agile, more integrated approach to internet access for enterprises that are built on the zero trust principles of verifying explicitly, using least privilege, and assuming breach. And what the end result is eliminating those gaps in the in your security stack. Today, with some siloed solutions, which again I mentioned, for instance, Zscaler, they're a leader in the space. Gartner has them, of course, up in the Magic Quadrant as a leader for all the right reasons and for good reason. But because they don't have the identity and the conditional access components in the back end, there might be gaps, between that product and your EDR XDR solution that you have on your endpoints, and perhaps you have a best of breed CASB solution in your environment too. But are they receiving the same signals? Are they able to communicate in real time together and make those types of access decisions? And that's again the differentiator and why Microsoft really has entered this space. Additional security capabilities with internet access is the secure web gateway. So now you can you'll be able to see, and this is a private preview feature right now, so it's not, you have to sign up for the private preview. If that's something you're interested in, we are encouraging our customers to do that. But the secure web gateway is going to allow for filtering, internet filtering, either using URL FQDNs or web category filtering, and some features that are going to be released soon as the product matures. User and context-aware cloud firewalls, universal continuous access evaluations for any destination, and TLS termination and inspection, and threat detection and intrusion detection and prevention. Right? These are all features that are going to be built on. Today, what you get in the public preview is those location checks and data exfiltration controls for all Microsoft Entra integrated cloud apps, and universal conditional access for any network destination. And for Microsoft 365, again, this is features that are available today to use. What's nice is that the solution is able to work side by side with third-party solutions. So if you already have a third-party SSE solution in your environment, the Microsoft solution will work alongside of it. And you can essentially just forward traffic, your Microsoft 365 traffic through the Microsoft Security Service Edge, and leave everything else currently as it's configured, or your internet or your other internet access traffic going through your incumbent solution in the meantime. But you will get the benefits of being able to use those adaptive access controls with conditional access. You're able to leverage the universal tenant restrictions now that are available with the client tagging that's available in the solution, in the Security Service Edge solution. And if you're not familiar with the tenant restrictions feature, it's not necessarily new. It's been a feature available for a couple years now. Started out as a solution that was heavily dependent on a network proxy doing the filtering. Then that evolved into being able to use group policy to set a setting in a cloud filtering policy on those devices that would essentially prevent a user accessing your Microsoft 365 resources on a corporate issued computer or device, and then being able to access a different Microsoft 365 tenant. Um, the example typically given for a scenario would be you have a contractor, someone you've hired, and you've issued them a corporate device that you control, that you manage and maintain, and they're working on that device from your environment. But they may be involved in perhaps some espionage, some corporate espionage, and they're opening up uh, access to their own OneDrive um, account that's outside of your tenant to exfiltrate data. With the tenant restrictions, you can prevent that. You can prevent that from happening. And the next evolution is this universal tenant restrictions capability, which will um, not even require a GPO to be setting um, a flag on the device to prevent that, but any device on that network, because of the way the traffic profile is set up, will automatically be prevented. And this works alongside, you have to set up your tenant restrictions within your tenant to do that, but it'll be universal. It'll be something you don't have to worry about. Is that device properly updated? Does it have the GPO applied, et cetera? So with the conditional access controls for connectivity to Microsoft Entra Internet Access, again, you'll have this new target, and this is what I'll show this in a real time in a real live tenant here at the end. But there's a new target called Global Secure Access, and you'll have the ability to select your Microsoft 365 traffic as a profile. And what that provides is this flexibility to configure conditional access policies on any or all access to network connectivity by default, or to explicitly select a specific traffic profile. Users can access these resource destinations only after they acquire a valid token from the Internet Access Service. Uh, this provides zero trust coverage for those resources that do not yet support basic authentication and conditional access natively. And then you can enforce and advance constructs like continuous access evaluation. Uh, Additionally, you can use the user and context awareness, such as device, location, etc., with network filtering policies as well. With the secure web gateway capabilities, you can now apply specific user, device, and location context to network filtering rules. Uh, in this example, you may, for instance, only want your PR department to be able to access social media sites, but block all other users. Uh, with the internet access enabled, as shown in this still, you'll have this opportunity under the session controls of your conditional access policies to enable that category of blocking social media sites for users, in this example, all users, and there are some exclusions. So you would have your, say, PR department group set up in your exclusions list in this policy. Uh, but everyone else would be subject to the session policy here, the session control, which is blocking, but PR will still be allowed. And then there's the compliant network check, which ensures that users connect from a verified network connectivity model for the specific enterprise tenant and is compliant with all the network security policies that have been enforced. The compliant network check is similar yet more powerful than the source IP, and it's much easier to manage and maintain. So If you've been using conditional access for some time, you may have set up a named network location and you had to go into that sort of legacy um, interface that goes all the way back to the early days of Azure Active Directory, where you set up your source IP addresses and you'd say, do not, for instance, require MFA if you're on my corporate network, and you would make those exclusions. That's the source IP. Well, now with the network compliance check, you don't have to have that cumbersome process, right, of compiling that list of all of your enterprise source IPs. All of your remote users, regardless of whether they are located in your branch office, their home location, or any other network, can be protected without, again, having to manage and maintain the source IP lists in your environment, which is also a good way to satisfy, the zero trust networking architecture. One of the benefits of this, of course, is you can prevent token theft. So this validates the user that the user is connecting from a verified device or network in your tenant, and it has support for that tenant level granularity. So someone that tries to steal a token and do a token replay on a different device won't be possible, because that device is not satisfying the controls that are in place that are only for this compliant network check. But for backward compatibility, you still have the ability to restore that source IP if for conditional access policies that you're still have set up using source IP as a condition or location as a condition. You'll still be able to restore that. There'll be an option in the logs to be able to restore that source IP, so you can see exactly where the access was coming from. Talked about universal tenant restrictions, but this is again the ability to do that universal tenant restriction now and not have to rely on either a proxy or a group policy object to do that. Again, when using Microsoft Entra Internet Access based tenant restriction v2 tagging, you get coverage for all traffic, agnostic of the browser or the OS stack that's used by the device, right? So that is a difference today with the current iteration of tenant restrictions version 2, where it would be limited to the Edge browser and on Windows, but now with universal tenant restrictions, any device, any browser, doesn't matter. You don't have to worry about managing the local proxies, and what is supported is branch connectivity and direct from device connectivity. The client and branch connectivity, again, this is sort of an extension of that. So you can configure your branch locations to connect directly to the security service edge. Essentially, an IPsec VPN tunnel is created between that branch location and Microsoft. That's currently a private preview feature. There's going to be added support for various CPE or customer premises equipment providers. The well-known names, the Palo Altos, the Cisco, the Checkpoints will all be part of that list. You can, and I've done this in my dev environment, setting it up just using an Azure network and an Azure virtual network gateway. From a testing perspective, again, that's one thing I'll demonstrate, or I won't say use the word demonstrate, but show how that's set up and what that looks like within the solution. Okay, so that was internet access. We'll talk about private access. So private access, again, you're probably familiar with one aspect of this if you've used the application app proxy in Entra for some time. And thousands of Microsoft customers have used it to protect those on-premise, private, or legacy applications. Private access is an identity-centric zero trust network access solution that shares the same application connectors as the Azure App Proxy connectors do, but offers more capabilities. Helping organizations to simplify and secure access to any private resource, port, or protocol. And because it has built-in it's built on zero trust principles, it removes the risk and operational complexity of those legacy VPNs, while at the same time being able to boost user productivity, not have to worry about having the right VPN client on the endpoint device, and also eliminates the need to having to provide that network access, which is what VPNs essentially do today, right? So we'll talk about how private access helps you move beyond VPNs, and why that's important. It's because legacy VPN networks security cannot take on and cannot scale to modern demands. We saw that 3 years ago, start of the pandemic, where everyone had to work from home. We had customers, or you might have heard others struggling with their VPN solutions, not having to keep up with that scale. Whereas before it might have been users accessing the VPN in the hundreds, now it's in the thousands for large organizations. They had to quickly scramble and find either ways to scale that up, or find alternative methods for their users to access corporate resources. And the other problem is VPNs grant access to the entire corporate network, right? And make the remote user's device part of that corporate network. So what does that mean? If you have one compromised user account, one infected device, one open port, that's all it takes for an attacker to get in and laterally move anywhere inside your network and gain access to your most critical assets. Colonial Pipelines, good a recent example of that, of how an account that was still active, not being used, was leveraged in that way to gain access to that environment. With private access, you can move to an identity-centric zero trust network access model and modernize access to those private applications. So some of the benefits, right? You have broad application support, so no longer limited to just HTTP protocols. You'll be able to secure access to any app, any port, any protocol, and non-web apps, that rely on TCP, UDP. I mentioned before, RDP and SSH, but also SMB, FTP, etc. Right? It's going to be the entire IP stack essentially. Identity-centric controls. You'll have the ability to now again leverage your conditional access policies, and coming soon, being able to revoke continuous access evaluation, or revoke access using CAE. Sorry, being able to do that so that user that is being termed, right, is losing access, without CAE in place. It becomes a matter of making sure that things get synced up properly, that you have to manually revoke those sessions, invalidate those sessions. Well, CAE is going to be able to do that more quickly and in real time. Capabilities you have today will still exist. So if you're using the Azure App Proxy for single sign-on to those private apps that are using SAML, Kerberos, and header base, that'll still be there. As mentioned before, right, these new connectors are essentially the same Azure App Proxy connectors that have been around that you're using. It's just now an extension of the capabilities. Can be able to segment the app access, have more granular controls to the app's visibility, discovery, and onboarding through an application discovery that enables you to discover your on-premise applications and onboard them to Microsoft Entra ID. So you can define granular access policies for them. That's going to enable you to gain this granular visibility across all private apps through this automatic discovery, app grouping, and easy onboarding for all private apps, including all existing app proxy private web apps. And coming soon is the ability to do this micro-segmentation based on the process identity. It's going to enable you to segment app access to specific applications instead of granting access to an entire network as traditional VPNs do. And you'll have the ability to define granular segmented access policies for each application to a group or to a group of applications. In addition to that segmenting, you can also segment access using the process identity. So down to the actual PID, you'll be able to provide that segmentation. And then finally, intelligent local access is a feature that's going to accommodate a post-pandemic world in which employees need a consistent security posture, whether they are accessing private applications remotely or on premises. Intelligent local access capabilities enables seamless ZTNA for users anywhere, whether they are local within the corporate network and when they are connecting remotely from anywhere beyond corporate network boundaries. Some of your scenarios and use cases for private access, again, quick access. So that's an easy migration from VPNs to zero trust network access with all private apps with a policy. So there's a capability within the solution where you can set up a quick access, basically have connectors deployed and provide access to say RDP for a group of servers. App discovery, that's another feature that's going to allow you to identify and onboard private applications to Entra ID, which then you can segment based on device, user, and even the process. And this segmentation is going to make it possible to define secure access and single sign-on policies using Entra Conditional Access, and then snap them to individual private applications or group of applications. Again, there's that per app access, rich apps, and segments, which includes things with legacy protocols like Kerberos and app groups and policies. So our kind of call to action here is pretty much our last slide or our contact slide, but there's the ability, if you're not in it today and you're interested in some of the capabilities, you can go to the private access, aka.ms private access, or aka.ms private access preview. If you go to the private access preview, this link, it's basically going to take you to your tenant and have you walk through the onboarding process. And if you need assistance with perhaps onboarding your tenant, for some of the private access features that may be closed at this time, let us know and we can talk to the product team, the product group at Microsoft, and see about getting you into the private access, the preview program. So that's our contact information. Before we conclude, let me just quickly show again, some of the areas where you would go to. So this is one of my dev environments here, and in the Entra portal, so if you go to entra.microsoft.com, you have this new capability down below permissions management called Global Secure Access. All the information you need to get started is right here within the Get Started links. Soon there'll be expansion of the global dashboard that will show you some information. So you see in my case, I have one device and one user configured, and I'm setting up some, I have some traffic profiles set up in particular. Right now, what I have configured is just the traffic forwarding for my Microsoft 365 access profile. Here it gives you information as to which conditional access policies you have it linked to, and it allows you to jump directly into those policies. And I've also assigned it to this remote network that I have configured in this environment. This is just an Azure virtual network or VNet that I've configured that is connected to this secure edge. It's still testing some things out, kind of still kicking the tires on it and learning about how things work. But that essentially is what you would see under your remote networks here. So if you set up any remote networks and tie them into Microsoft Security Service Edge, this is where you would see that activity and any client. So if you install the Global Secure Access Windows client, right now that's the client that's available. This is where you would do that, and where you would then be able to connect those clients. And those clients, prerequisite there is they do have to be hybrid Entra joined or directly Entra ID joined to the tenant that is enabled here, but then you can install that client on that device and it would pick up the policies that have been configured for it. And finally, under your conditional access policies, this was called out before in one of the slides, but you have this new target resource where you can specify your the traffic profiles that you have enabled. My internet traffic and private traffic is currently disabled. Private traffic only because I don't have anything configured for it. But if you set that up, that is a public preview feature right now. You can use it. The internet traffic is what is in private preview. So if you wanted to test that out, you'd have to be in the private preview program in order to do that. Okay, that's the end of my presentation. So I do see a question, Mac OS. So the what I have heard is that yes, there will be a client for Mac OS. Obviously, as the product matures, and that will be available. And the other thought is that in time, part of these capabilities might just be built into the Windows platform. They not require a separate client, or might be part of the Defender client as well. That's still up in the air. These are things that are being discussed, and we'll all get the same information as time goes on. Let's see, any other questions? Yeah, so there, I don't have any timing. Yeah, a lot of this stuff, time-wise, we don't have a lot of information as to when we can expect some of these, features, individual features, specific features to be made available. But I would say just stay tuned. And again, if you're interested in, evaluating it, then definitely take advantage of the features available now in public preview. I mentioned before, Microsoft 365 traffic. If you have an E3 license or an Entra ID P1 license, you can start doing that today. You do have to, onboard your tenant. I mentioned this before. This is kind of what it looks like. If you go to that private access preview, it basically takes you to your tenant and will start to, tell you, what you need to do in order to activate the global secure access in your tenant. But once you do that, then you can start evaluating any of the public preview features. And then if you enter the private preview, you'll have access to those features as well. Okay, well, if there's no other questions, again, thanks everyone for joining us today, and we hope to see you on our next webinar. Take care.